they moved to Florida this year. They're Melbourne, Florida, which is over there. The states in the east side of Florida. She's moved to Melbourne. And they were living in, Thomas from the bank, was a friend of the bank for about 6 years. Retired everyone just now talking about it. Yeah, because he loved it. And they were down there quite suddenly all the time. But they're the same crowd. And Nancy's health. Getting on okay, but she's uses walls now. She's got some balance. So anyway, they got another house and they moved to I've talked to them 2 or 3 times, but I don't expect that she's going to be back here. I don't have any family back in because her children are all in Florida. Down in school on his third leg. And sure as all our offense can't. Was he affected up school? Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call the meeting to order here. Go ahead and continue to eat, of course, but we're going to get started, and I think everybody's got their food by now. This is a meeting, a reunion of both the Class of 52 and the Class of 51. Jane Ray Haynes got the idea to join forces. I think we did this once before. At our 30-year reunion, we had 3 classes, 50, 51, and 52, and this is the first time we've had another joint reunion with anybody this year. So what I'm going to make I have a YouTube channel, and I've been putting our reunions on that channel. What I think I'm going to do this time to keep everything simple and straight is we'll let each class go before we, and keep them separate, and I'll do 2 separate posts. There'll be a post for the Class of 52 and one for the Class of 51. As that way you don't have to, if you don't want to listen to both of them, you can just choose your class and that sort of thing. Now the last time we had a reunion, it was right here 2 years ago, Class of 52, and Bartow Fanning, who lives in Lubbock, and was not able to be here for health reasons, not here this year for the same reason. He told, when he saw the video on YouTube, he said, it's almost like being there. So what we did is made a movie of everybody when they kind of told where they were living, what you're doing, what's going on in your life right now, that sort of thing. So that's why we're going to keep it in order so I can make 2 separate postings. We'll start with Class 52 and then 51 unless someone would like for us to start the other way around. Would you like to start with 51 or 52? Anybody got a preference? If not, we'll start with Class 52. Since I think our distinguished valedictorian of the class is here, Joanne Copeland Scarborough, we'll let her start first, and if you would, just tell us what you want to about what's been going on in your life, where you live, what you do, and that sort of thing.
I live in a little town called Granite Shoals, west of Austin. It's a very small community on Lake LBJ, Highland Lakes area, west of Austin. It's near Burdick County. The nearest large place is called Marble Falls, which you may have heard of. It's on a lake. It's a lovely place for vacationers and so forth. We happened to be there, as you may know. My husband spent 20 years in the Navy, and he retired. We were in Beaumont for 9 years, and I don't know whether our house was flooded out or not. I've hesitated to call because I saw pictures of Beaumont underwater, and it was so heartbreaking. I had to really check to see what happened. But he retired a second time. He was a teacher in Beaumont for a while. Retired a second time up to the Highland Lakes area where his parents had built a small house years ago, and we moved up there temporarily to look around to see where we really wanted to retire, and that was 34 years ago, and we're still there. We've added onto the house 3 times, 4 times, added a garage, all that kind of thing, but we're going to apparently be there forever and ever, and that's what we're doing now. And obviously we're all retired. We've had a bed and breakfast for about 11 years in a cottage there, but right now we are just trying to keep ourselves together. And the thing I most is genealogy, family history, but I've got stacks and stacks of boxes that need to be gone through and put in some kind of order. Order is not really something that I learned, although I should have in Winnsboro High School. We had Gladys Burkham, who was very orderly, etc. One of my funny stories now I'm telling, my grandson is now a senior in high school in the band, marching band, and I said, oh, I used to be in the band, and I got my yearbook out, which I had forgotten to bring here, just to show him this picture, and his band must have like 150 people in it. And there's, you know, my band picture's about this size, so it was a little hard to relate. But that's what I've been doing, is reliving band era times this year. And this is my daughter, Sheila Scarborough. She kept her maiden name, but she is married, and we have 2 grandchildren.
I didn't want to change my name, and neither did my husband.
Yeah,
That's easy.
but I will let her tell her own story, or unless you. She also spent 22 years in the Navy, retired, and came back to Texas to take care of her elderly parents. So she's now my driver, as she jokes about it, driving Miss Daisy to this trip, back and forth. It's great to be here, and we were here last night, and we were just so impressed with what's been going on in Winnsboro, and I told Joe Dan this many, many times. Some of you may not appreciate it, but I think it's because they voted wet. And after that, the place just blossomed. There are now restaurants and places to go and things to see, and people come here. But it's really exciting to drive around and see all the activity downtown and what's happening. And so I'm very pleased to be able to come back. And thank you for calling up this great day.
Yeah. Thank you, Joanne. It's almost as great as a nightlife as it was when you were in high school.
Well, if they put the movie theater, then I'd recognize the nightlife.
Okay, we're going to call next on Dalton Monday. Would you stand up and tell us a little about your life, Dalton?
Oh. Well, my name is Dalton Monday, and I've been kind of running around the country a little bit. When I got out of high school, I went to Houston, and I was going to be a welder for a while, but it seems like that the guy that was in charge of the welding there, he didn't think so. So I thought, well, I'll just go join the Navy. So I did, and I stayed in the Navy from 52 until in 71. And I rode submarines everywhere, all over the world, and enjoyed that. That was right in the middle of the Korean War, and on through the Vietnam War. But I married in '55. I married Janice Lee Jones, and she spent the rest of my time in the Navy with me, and we were married 26 years. We had 4 children, and everything was going good until '81, until we were going to California to watch my next to the youngest son graduate from the Marine Corps. And we got to Yuma, Arizona, and motorhome was in, caught on fire, so and I lost my wife and grandchild in that fire. So that ended that trip, and so we came back. But I've been traveling around quite a bit. I married a young lady from Jacksonville, Florida, a year or so later, and we've been married 35 years. So she didn't feel up to par today. She didn't make it. But we live in holiday villages outside of Quitman now, and but we travel the country in an RV for about 10 years, and we got tired of traveling, so we settled down for a little while, and I'm just about. We'd like to sell the place there and go to an apartment somewhere, but then I wouldn't be able to mow the yard then. I'd just be looking out the window and watching people walk by. But everything has been going real good for me and everything, and that's just about the size of it. So anyhow, I try to keep making this. Joe Dan keeps sending me stuff that they're gonna have a reunion, so I try to go ahead and make it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dalton. Dalton and I have been trying to get Bobby Falk, who was Dalton's best friend in Winnsboro High School, and he's been at one reunion, and Dalton and I both have been trying to get him to attend another one, and have not been successful. So if any of you know, Bobby lives over around Grand Saline. Where is it? Friendswood? Fruitvale. And put in a good word for the reunion. We'd like to see him. He was Mr. WHS one. Some of you will remember that. We're going to call on Charlie Winkle now.
I'm a Korean veteran, Marine Corps veteran. I've got grandkids, great-grandkids, and family's getting bigger and bigger all the time. And I spend a lot of time with these grandkids. I enjoy it.
Amen.
That's all I have to say about that.
Well, Charlie's active in the American Legion here, and used to be, I guess you still are. And you see his name pop up from time to time in various civic activities. He's a man of few words, but he's a busy man.
Joe Dan,
Yeah.
when I was in East Texas, I spent one semester with Charlie in an apartment up there, and that's all I could take. I had to leave and start commuting again.
I don't know who
I don't know who his partner was, but they were too rough for me.
I don't know who did the kicking out, but somebody kicked somebody out.
Okay, continuing in the class of 52, sitting right next to Charles there is Rulie Howell.
Charlie wasn't a choir boy back in the end, I didn't.
Well, I'm not really a good one now.
We're going to ask Rulie to stand up and give us a little bit on his life.
I'm going to give you less than Charlie did. I'm retired and moved back to the Winnsboro area. I retired from State Farm Insurance as an agent and been back down here 15 years. So I have 2 sons, a wife, 4 grandkids. And that's all. I did do more than Charlie did.
Well, I think you both of you have expressed probably what all of us feel is how much we love our grandchildren. And let's see, Clovis June Webb Bacon is next.
Okay, probably a lot of y'all, well, most of you don't even remember me, but I came to Winnsboro in the middle of my 10th grade, and from Mount Vernon, and my daughter-in-law and my son, I drove them down here with me, and Lisa, my daughter-in-law, is just shocked that I never talk about Mount Vernon. I never think about Mount Vernon. Winnsboro is where I'm from, and I can't explain that. So anyway, moved to Oklahoma City. PJ and I were married 56 years, and we had a good marriage, 4 kids, and we have 6 grandchildren. Thank heavens no great-grandchildren, because none of them were married until last weekend. One of them got married. PJ died in 2012 of February. So we lived on the lake outside of Tulsa, Keystone Lake, and had a place out there. And so he told me, he said, June, I want, and back up a little bit, I was Clovis Webb. But when I got my first job, this is how different it was. My boss said to me, first of all, you have to promise me you will stay with me. You will not quit. I'm tired of training girls. I said, I promise you. And I did for 3.5 years. But he looked at my application, and he said, I'm gonna call you June, is that okay? And I said, you bet. I mean, you call me anything you want to, I got a job. So that's how I became June. Everybody except my mom and dad called me that, leaving my sisters and brothers later. But PJ and I married and in 56, and so he died, as I started to say, in 2012. Well, he said, June, I want you to leave the lake and I want you to move into Tulsa. And so it was, you know, about 30 minutes outside of Tulsa. So I bought a condo, and he died in February and I bought it in August. I usually did just about what he wanted me to do. And so I'm not sorry. I'm very glad. Sometimes I think about, I kind of wish I had that place, but I couldn't keep it mowed like we did and all that. So I live in Tulsa, and I'm very active in the Tulsa Boys Home, Women's Association of the Tulsa Boys Home, to try and help all the boys that have been physically, sexually, mentally abused in every imagine. A lot of those boys have been sexually abused by their mothers, which shocked me. But back to my story. So I moved into the condo, got on the board. Now I'm president of the board. I don't recommend that for anyone. Old people gripe about everything. They gripe if the grass grows the wrong direction. So, you know, but I love it. I'm very active. I go to Health Club St. John's every morning and have for 20 some odd years. Doesn't keep your figure, but it keeps your health. I haven't seen a doctor since PJ died. I'm in good health. But you know, I just really think of our class and how much it meant and how much our school and how different it is now. And you know what? We all became, whatever we became, it was from our schooling and our parents, of course, but our schooling did a lot for us. And so, thank you all. I think that's all I have to say. Goodbye.
Thank you, Clovis June. I believe the next one is Peggy Dahl Boyd. Would you stand up and say a few words?
You people that live around here probably know that we're fixing to have a bond election for a new high school. And the WISD school offices are up there in the old North Ward School, where that school was. And the other day as I went to vote and walked up those cement stairs, all these memories flooded into my mind because that's where I started first grade.
Oh my goodness.
And I told Jodan when I got home, I said, you must go vote early and walk up those steps and see if you have any memories flood your mind the way I did. That didn't happen with him. But anyway, graduated, married, had 3 children. Jodan and I married in 94. We've been married 23 years now. What I do to stay busy, I teach a Sunday school class and have since probably 03 or 04. I'm very active in the prison ministry out here. That's the prison that's here in Winnsboro. I've been doing that since 06. We don't, Jodan is much busier than I am, but what I do is very fulfilling, and I enjoyed it. The most recent thing that has happened to me is I had open heart surgery in July, and I'm still in the process of doing cardiac rehab. And the Lord has really blessed me. He's blessed Jodan and I in our marriage and with our health. So we're just very pleased that we can return and work in His service since He has blessed us mightily. That's all I got.
Okay.
Peggy, I'm sorry. When we moved here, I was just starting 5th grade, which was in the old North Ward School. And I remember at 3 stories high, and as I recall it, we had a coal-burning stove in the middle of this room. Am I remembering that right? Because I can distinctly, in my memories, maybe I could not, people hauling coal up and putting it in that stove, in that great big, the 3rd floor, big room up there. Amazing.
Yeah,
There
the
was
one
a
thing that,
gymnasium up there on that top floor.
On that top floor?
Yeah.
I just remember the cold stove, the cold stove.
One of the things I remember so vividly about being in that school is when we wrapped the maypole one year. I don't know if you were involved in it.
Remember that.
And that still, that has stuck in my mind because these kids today probably don't even know what a maypole is.
No.
That
was fun. That was good.
I'm going to ask Charles to hold this while I say a few words. If you need to zoom it, this is the way you do it. I'm Joe Dan Boyd. Some of you know me, maybe all of you. I don't know. I don't know everybody here, but I didn't have all those memories flood me when I walked up the steps to North Ward because I didn't start first grade there. I started out at one of the country schools, the little, we called it Vernon in the day. Vernon Country School. It was one of many, like Rowley started out, I think, at Pleasant Grove, probably.
So did I.
Who did?
I did too.
I see. Okay, so a lot of us started out in those little country schools. And I went through the 6th grade in the country school. In fact, Jane Ray Haynes' mother was my teacher for the last few years. My first teacher was Helen Ragsdale. My second teacher was Lolita Burkett, and my third teacher was Maybelle Cunningham. Then I had Irene Ray for the rest of my time out there. So I started in the 7th grade, and it was nice to walk up there and walk in the new building. They have redone that building. It's only 1 story. When we were in school there, it was 3 stories and a basement. But I still enjoyed going up there, but I didn't have the history that Peggy had on it. But I encourage all of you who live in the Winnsboro Independent School District to vote for the bond issue. Well, we sure do need new facilities. And I'll just say that I was with Farm Journal magazine for 40 years, lived in several different states during that period. I started out with Fort Worth Star-Telegram right out of college, and then went in the Army for a while, for field artillery, and I was in the reserves 6 years. I was required to be in the reserves, legally required to be in the reserves 6 years, at which time I stopped participating. I loved the reserves. I really enjoyed being in the Army. I enjoyed being in the reserves, you know. But if you weren't required legally to be in the reserves, that 2 weeks of extra duty every year counted against your vacation. And that was a deal breaker for me. I got out of the reserves, so I didn't have to call it vacation when I went to summer camp active duty for 2 years. Every time I went to that was always either Fort Sill or Fort Bliss, because I was an artilleryman. So then I went with the National FFA magazine. Some of you know that was kind of my thing in high school, FFA. And I worked for the National FFA magazine for 2 years and got an offer from Farm Journal magazine, then the biggest and best farm magazine in the world. Some would say still is. I don't know. I haven't been on the staff. I can't really comment whether it still is or not. But when I was there, it was that. And you know, I don't think I would have left that job at the FFA magazine for any other employer, and you know, it was just kind of my dream job. But my 2 years at the National FFA magazine were the 2 happiest years of my life, professionally and personally. It was a wonderful 2 years, the Camelot of my life. Although I've been happy at every job I've ever had, even enjoyed farming when I was growing up. I did not want to be a farmer, you know, so, but I loved it when I had to be a farmer. And then Texas A&M, agricultural journalism degree, and after I retired and Peggy and I married, moved here in '97, got Jimmy Ham to build us a house out on I grew up on the old, I was born on and grew up on the Tenney farm, and we now live on part of that land. And I'm involved in Tennant Chapel. I probably spend more time working for, I'm busier than I ever was, but I don't get paid for very much of it. It's all volunteer work for the most part. Tennant Chapel Communications. I'm involved in the Native American Fellowship here, and involved in the Live Poets Society here. I've been involved pretty actively in the Winnsboro Center for the Arts. I'm downsizing on that to some extent now. I'm not nearly as active in that organization as I used to be. They have new management there, younger blood and whatever, people that are more creative and younger than me. So I'm happy to make way for them. Mary White is the current president of the Arts Center. She had an unbelievable career in medicine industry. She invented some absolutely stunning things, and it's kind of brought the Winnsboro Center for the Arts to new life. And I would say, in addition to what Joanne said a while ago about why is Winnsboro such an active small town now, after so many years when they rolled up the sidewalks at 5 o'clock, now there's nightlife here, a whole lot of it. And I'd say the Winnsboro Center for the Arts is responsible, is one of the big reasons for that, as well as the things that she mentioned. Some of you know, I agree with Edward, especially June, talking about our school, what it did for us. You know, all of us had Gladys Burger. And Terry Matthews, who's now who was in another class, she's much younger than we are. I think she was a Miss Autumn Trails, I think in the 70s. I went to her, I was at the, I lived in Memphis at the time, but I was here when she presided over the coronation of the new Miss Autumn Trails. And she sang, played a Martin nylon string guitar and played and sang "Leaving on a Jet Plane." And then I think it was was that John Denver song? And she did it really well. And she is now the arts and copy editor of the Winnsboro News and has transformed the Winnsboro News. Winnsboro News is a far better paper than it was before Terry came on. By that I mean she has brought them into coverage of things that they didn't cover before, such as arts and this sort of thing. But she wrote a letter to the Winnsboro News several years ago before she moved back, long before she moved back here, talking about how when she was in college, had an English teacher who once the English teacher learned she had Gladys Burkham for an English teacher. He said, "You don't have to come to class. You know, just turn in the papers, and you know that I can't teach you anything." Really, seriously, she wrote a letter to that effect. And she said she might stop in today. You know, while she's covering the all-school reunion, which they have their program at 2:30 in the Rock Gym. I think most of you know that. Those of you in the class of 52 got one of these directories, and in it there's a Autumn Trails brochure here, which gives all the details on Autumn Trails. And we'll be done in plenty of time for all of you to go to that 2:30 program at the Rock Gym. I will say that this little title deal on your directories, this is a picture of our graduating class as we posed in the study hall for Johnny Woods to make this picture. Some of you remember that. And there's also a couple of things in your folder here with some scenes that Mrs. McCullough, oh no, what was her name? What was the photographer's name?
McAfee.
McAfee.
Margie
McAfee's mother, is that right?
Yes.
I don't know her name, but she was the photographer that Johnny Woods bought out, you know, but when we were graduating from high school, Johnny Woods was making all the pictures. and that sort of thing. But Ms. McAfee made a whole bunch of pictures back in the day, and some of them are in your folder here. Here's a picture of the Carnegie Library before they raised and bulldozed it. It was for a good cause. They raised this historic building for a new Brookshire's. Nowadays that wouldn't happen, but back when it happened, we didn't have people looking out for that sort of thing. I'll say if anybody sees a correction in your directory, Charlie Winkle has given me a correction for his email. It's is that C-Wink or is it something?
CM.
CMWink33@gmail.com if you want to correct it. I'll be sending out a correction later, but look at your directory and see if there's anything wrong with your postal or email address or phone number, and let me know. We'll correct it. If you'll notice, the directory is, I believe, current as of today, and at the end of it, there's the last page, almost the whole page of deceased classmates in our class of 52.
35. We counted them, 35.
35. Okay. It starts with Joyce Chitsey. You remember,
Yeah.
Joyce was working at, I think it was Lone Star, around the Dangerfield area,
Yeah.
and was coming back. Some of them were, I think maybe Joyce might have been asleep in the back seat, and there was a bad accident, and Joyce did not survive. And his funeral, was huge. I've never seen a more crowded funeral or a more sad funeral for a young man who passed away in the summer of 1954. And then it ends with James Coy White, who died in September the 28th. And I want to mention J.D. Wilson because some of you may not remember J.D. Wilson. He was in our class, and I remember, I think it was at our 30-year reunion, Suzanne Green accused me of making him up. She said, he was not in our class, And so you made him up, you're just trying to be creative. Well, his funeral was, I went to his funeral on August the 26th. He's interred out at the Little Hope, the historic, there's a Texas historical marker out there on 312 for the Little Hope deal. And now, while he was not well known, but he was in our class, he did graduate, and I talked to his wife at their funeral, and she remembered. Now she was not from here, so she didn't have any history here at all. But I told her about what I've just told you, and she said, "Oh yeah, he always talked about finishing school at Winnsboro." He was only in our senior year, and I think he was at maybe Sulphur Springs. I think she said he was at Sulphur Springs. He moved down here for some reason.
There was a story about him moving to our class, and I've tried to think of what it was. Might have been one we made up, but it was a good story about why he was there.
Yeah, well, she told me there was a story of why he moved here.
Okay.
But I didn't record that for posterity.
Okay, all right.
Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Did I miss anybody in the class of 52?
No, but can I ask a question while
Yeah.
you're still on your own subject?
I remember going to visit with you and your family in Philadelphia at one point when we were living in New England.
Yeah, you and Sheila.
Yeah, Sheila and I were both there, but which magazine, where was that? Was that with where Farm Journal
Yeah.
was, or the FFA magazine?
That was Farm Journal. FFA magazine was in Alexandria, Virginia, a suburb of Washington.
Right.
We were printed by a company in D.C., and I would go over and have to cross the river and spent time in D.C. Talking to our printer, But Philadelphia was the home office of Farm Journal, and I lived in a little town called Willow Grove, about a 45-minute train ride to Philadelphia, and I would take the train every day into Philadelphia to Reading Station, and then walk to my office, which was on Washington Square, which adjoins Independence Square.
Oh, yeah.
So I visited Independence Hall a lot, and probably my fondest memory of Independence Hall was early on when I was up there. There was a little roped off area. I mean, when I say roped off, just a little small rope. Nothing else protect. The Liberty Bell was inside the little rope. It was this was in the first floor of Independence Hall now, and you could walk in there, and you could actually touch the bell, except the security guard was there to keep you from doing that. But I mean, you were that close to it, and they had this loop recording that would over and over again. And you remember how distinctive Edward R. Murrow's voice was? And you know, you walk up to it and then suddenly you'd hear, "This is the Liberty Bell." Edward R. Murrow. You didn't have to know.
Hey, Joanne,
The voice was so
did you
distinct.
try to touch the bell? You seem to be the type that would do that.
I was tempted, but the security guard was much larger than I. But anyway, that was a wonderful experience. Now they've since, after that, the Liberty Bell was moved to another place in Philadelphia.
Just across the street.
Also, the Farm Journal office, which was built by the founder of our Farm Journal, Wilbur Atkinson, in 1912. The magazine goes back to 1877, but the building was built in 1912. And it has been, Farm Journal has moved out of that, sold the building, moved into a high-rise in Philadelphia, and I've been there one time since I've been in the high-rise. But when you visited me, I lived in this little town of Willow Grove.
Do you remember what year that was? I just don't remember.
No, but I might have a record of it somewhere.
Everybody was small when it was our phone.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we're ready to start with the class of 51 now. Let's see if we got this. Yeah.
You got that right.
But I'm not anymore.
Well, the reason I asked, if you can read the Winnsboro paper, one of my favorite deals is the joke of the week.
Yeah, I read those.
Anybody read the one this week?
I do, but I can't remember what it was.
I would like to tell it, if
Tell
you
it.
don't mind.
Go ahead.
It's a story of a lady who had a mysterious kitchen utensil in her kitchen. It was partly a large spoon with holes in the bottom, and it was partly a spatula. She didn't know what to call it, so she used it for both. She used it part of the time for a spoon, part of the time as a spatula. So she hung it up in her kitchen and hung there for many years. She kept using it. Finally, she was at a rummage sale one day, and she picked up an item and took it home. And she opened it up. It was a brand new package. Inside of it was this utensil, and it was a pooper scooper.
I didn't read that.
Thank you, Hank.
I think.
It's picture time, Joanne.
Okay, it's now 1:35. Remember, the all-school reunion is at 2:30. We'd like to get a group picture. We can do this in 5 minutes. If the class of 52 will line up over here by the door, I'll make that one first. And then the class of 51, we can do it in the next 5 minutes. We can do that one. Start with the class of 52. Class members only. Is that Cater Hill gal? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Class 52 lining up for the door.
This is 52.